Good morning, everybody. Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet on Tuesday, the 23rd of May from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Can everyone ensure that their mobile phones are either on silent or switched off? And can I remind members and officers that and anybody making deputations to use their microphones? In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting this morning? We invite you forward when it is time for you to make your contribution. Turning to the agenda, the first item is apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Westwood and no other apologies. Everybody else is here. Second item is disclosure of interests. I need to disclose a personal non-pecuniary interest as a county councillor. And for example, on one of the committees discussed later on, I've been appointed to it by the county council and not by the city council. Councillor Porter.
Can I declare the same interest, please, because I'm also a county councillor?
Thank you. Are there any other interests to be declared? Thank you very much. I have requests from councillors to speak. The ones I can see in the room are Councillors Wallace, Lee and Horrell. I don't know if Councillor Tippett Cooper is going to be.
I haven't heard, Chair, sorry.
Okay, well, if he comes, we will slot him into the relevant place on the agenda. The next item is public participation. Mr. Tate, would you like to come forward and make your deputation?
Do I get a timer just add? Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address Cabinet. I wish to bring to your attention what I consider as a very serious concern that I have regarding landlords using no-fault eviction notices to gain possession of rented properties within this district. I recently attended a county court case where the landlord was seeking the repossession of a first-floor flat. The case was thankfully dismissed on a technicality. The property is owned by the council and is actually in St Paul's Ward and has been let to an affordable housing provider. The occupant of the ground floor flat was evicted last July, also by way of a Section 21 notice. And they had to present themselves as homeless to the council. They happened to be a personal friend of mine. Thankfully, they are now securely housed in a council flat in Winchester. However, the whole experience, as you will understand, was very traumatic and worrying for them. The old flat remains empty and obviously isn't earning any rental income or, more importantly, housing anyone. I'm very alarmed that a property that is owned by the council could be subject to the use of a no-fault Section 21 order. I'm in contact with the landlord and they tell me that they are going to look into this matter, but with the pending changes in the tenancy legislation, I'm assuming that the landlord will not seek repossession using the Section 21 no-fault order. Clearly, it would not be appropriate to discuss a specific case in an open forum. However, I have already flagged up the background details to the council, so I'd be grateful if an assurance can be given that the tenant will not forcibly be evicted from their council-owned property. There is a wider question about the landlord. They took over a Winchester housing charity back in 2013, which had a number of councillors as trustees. They have subsequently disposed of the bulk of the charity's assets. I did my calculations earlier today. just over 2.1 million has been raised, yet those resources have not, as far as I can tell, been used in the Winchester area. So I appreciate this is your first business meeting of the new municipal year, but there is a time urgency for the occupant who would not want to be, I don't believe, have the public exposure of being named. But I was allowed to go to the county court as a member of the public, so it is in the public domain. So I hope that that reassurance can be given by the leader of the council, particularly for a property owned by the council and in his own ward. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tate, for bringing that to my attention. As you might imagine, as a former employee of Shelter, the housing and homelessness charity, and a current supporter of that charity, I have strong views on the use of Section 21 grounds possession. I'm very pleased to hear that it is being phased out. I also, in an earlier life, wrote a policy paper for the Liberal Democrats highlighting the issue of the unaccountability of housing associations, the real policy problems presented by that. So thank you for drawing my attention to those issues. The council obviously has a statutory duty to help people avoid homelessness, and we are not supportive of Section 21 grounds possession. I don't know what powers, if any, we have to bring that to bear on properties that we own but have leased out. 20% of homeless prevention by councils is due to Section 121 notices, and it's a big priority for this council to work with people at risk of homelessness to help them avoid homelessness. Our goal is very much that everybody in our district has a secure and affordable home. I'm sure I will talk to officers afterwards to make sure that we're providing whatever support we can in this particular case. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes held of the meetings held on the 6th of March and the 16th of March. There is also an exempt minute, which in theory could be taken later in the meeting, but if nobody has any desire to discuss it under exempt, I'd like to approve all the minutes in one go. Cameron, are you happy to do that? Emma, Chief Executive, can I do that? Thank you. Okay, so the minutes published in the agenda and the exempt minute, which was only circulated to members of Cabinet, are approved. The next item is to my responsibility to appoint Cabinet members and allocate responsibilities. Do I still need to do this if I've done it at full council? Or can do it again.
Leader, I'm sure you can refer to your words at full council and indicate the new Cabinet is here with you today, with one exception.
Yeah, I think I'd like to welcome the colleagues of Cabinet back who are still in place. I'd like to welcome Councillor Cutler and Councillor Westwood to Cabinet in their absence. And I would like to thank Councillor Gordon-Smith, Councillor Power and former Councillor Ferguson for their work during the last year. The next item. The next item is Leader and Cabinet Member announcements. I don't believe we have any announcements today. No. The next item after that is annual appointments to Cabinet committees, informal groups and fora. I have a list here which has all the relevant people to be appointed. I'm not sure. I think I may be the lucky position of being the only person who does. This is where I need to. Here we go. So the Cabinet Committee regeneration. So first of all, we have 3 cabinet committees. Each of them has either 4 or 3 cabinet members appointed.
Excuse me, Chair. I think Councillor Horrell wished to speak on this item. She's just
All right, Councillor
reminding me.
Horrell, would you like to speak on this item? I do apologise. And are there any other councillors? No. Councillor Horrell, fire away.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak at your first Cabinet meeting of the new municipal year. And just a brief comment regarding the internal appointments, if I may. We have submitted names, and I hope before you make the appointments, you will consider the best councillor colleagues for the role, and also for the sharing of that information across the council. I very much welcome the reintroduction of the local plan cabinet committee and have just been handed the terms of reference. But as we know previously, that committee served the council well. And as we go on with the next stage of the local plan, I'm sure that will be a very positive addition to our governance process. Chair, I also would like to just comment on the issue of champions, which is the last page of this document. And although the champions are established with 1 vacancy, it was discussed last year in another place that why was it that we did not have a broader representation? I indeed was involved with the Ukrainian discussion, and there was some surprise that the City of Sanctuary, for example, only had 1 councillor involved. My suggestion to you is there may be a benefit to the council of a broader representation on some of these bodies, which are clearly not political. They are efforts to be involved with the armed forces, for example, are very positive work on equality, diversity and inclusion, and that there are other members who would like to be involved in those opportunities. So I share that with you, Chair, in the hope that you may consider that there is a broader base that would be helpful to us as a council in terms of our representation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Horrell. I will now lay out the decision that we have in front of us, and then after that go through the particular recommendations, and hopefully that will address some of your points. As Councillor Horrell has mentioned, we are now moving to having 3 cabinet committees: regeneration, housing and the local plan. These will have either 3 or 4 cabinet members who, under the law and the I will come back to that, but I actually want to introduce what we're going to do. So I will first explain what it is we're intending to do at this meeting and how we're going to discuss it. So there are 3 sort of categories of bodies that we will be appointing in this section of the agenda. The first is the formal cabinet committees. There are 3 of these. These either have 3 or 4 voting cabinet members, and then representatives from other groups. I've decided, or we will discuss these in a minute, but the proposal is that the other groups are roughly in order of representation, proportionality, reflecting the nature of the fact that obviously a majority of the voting members are members of cabinet. So for each of the committees, there will be 2 Liberal Democrat backbench members, 2 Conservative members, and then there will be a Green Party member on the local plan subcommittee. So that is what we will discuss in terms of cabinet committees for regeneration. We then have the informal forums, which we will go through, and the point that Councillor Horrell made in terms of making sure that people are directly relevant will be something we reflect in our decision making. And then we have the champions question, which Councillor Horrell is right to remind me that we talked about a year ago, and my recollection is that there were some constitutional limits in some of them, and particularly my recollection is the Armed Forces Champion was agreed at full council as a single position. So I'm not sure what flexibility we have to change that in that meeting, but we will come back to that at a later point. So that's what we will shortly be discussing. I know that Councillor Wallace also wants to make a deputation on this issue, if you would like to come forward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a short bit from me. As you know, following the recent local elections, the Greens have now doubled our presence on Winchester Council and have formed the Green Group. As such, we are pleased to be able to take up places on both the Cabinet committees and outside bodies in support of the Council's work. In particular, over the coming year, we're keen to support the Council's overarching aim of going greener faster, including speeding up retrofit of council properties, improving biodiversity across the district, and taking steps to reduce the impact of transport, which contributes over half the greenhouse gases in the Winchester district. Scientists are warning of an imminent breach of the 1.5 degrees global temperature limit, with repercussions for all of us. There is much more that can be done, and we look forward to working with the Cabinet on these actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And of course, very congratulations to your group on now being a group, and I look forward to you. I would stress with all of these meetings, there are meetings in public, councillors can make deputations, and even on those committees on which you may not have a place, I look forward to hearing your representations in those meetings. So the nominations for the Cabinet committees are as follows. For Cabinet, the Cabinet Committee Regeneration, the Cabinet nominations are Councillors Lerney, Thompson, Cutler and myself as Chair. The two Liberal Democrat nominations are Councillors Edwards and Cromoyson. Two Conservative nominations are Councillors Bolton and Godfrey. Cabinet, are you agreed with that nomination? Okay. Cabinet Housing.
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. Did you want to appoint any deputies?
We don't actually have deputies within the terms of reference, and I don't have Liberal Democrat names. What we've done in the past is allow the rule for Cabinet deputies is that any member of Cabinet can deputise. In practice, what we did on one occasion last year, I think with Regen, was where Councillor Bolton was here, or even though not appointed as a deputy, we allowed him to step in. So what I suggest is that deputies are appointed at the Chair's discretion from any member of the Council of the appropriate group, rather than having them for some groups and not for others. So, Cabinet, are you happy to have that as an agreed approach? Good, thank you. In terms of Cabinet Housing, the Cabinet members are Councillors Westwood, Cutler and Becker. The Liberal Democrat representatives are Councillors Batho and Scott, and the Conservative representative are Councillors Miller and Horrell. Cabinet, are you agreed with that? Agreed. The Cabinet Committee Local Plan, the new committee that is established, the nominations are for Cabinet members are Councillors Porter as Chair, Councillor Lerney and myself. The Liberal Democrat, Councillor Porter.
Very sorry, but in the terms of reference which have just been placed with us here today, it doesn't add up. So on the top bit, the committee's membership will be Cabinet member for place plus 2 other Cabinet members, and then at the bottom it's got recommended 4 voting members, 3 other Cabinet.
So we haven't agreed. So
we have agreed at the moment.
The paper makes it clear that the terms of reference will be agreed at a later date. So we're not bound by the terms of reference at the moment. We can adjust the terms of reference to reflect the decision that we have in front of us.
So we're nominating 3.
So we are nominating 3.
Okay, thank you. Just check.
So The nominations are Councillors Porter, Lerney and Todd, with Councillor Porter as chair. The Conservative nominations are Councillors Reid and Horrell. The Liberal Democrat nominations are Councillors Laming and Williams, and the Green Party nomination is Councillor Lee. So, Cabinet, you agreed with those? Thank you. We'll now move to the forums. A lot of these, I think, are fairly automatic in terms of their membership. The Carbon Neutrality Open Forum, the structure of that is that there is formally one member, which is the Cabinet Member Responsibility for Climate Change, and everyone else is invited to attend as they wish. So the nomination there is Councillor Lerney as chair. The Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Forum, slightly complicated in terms of its structure. The 5 members, so there's the Cabinet Member for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, which is Councillor Becker. There is the Member Champion for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, which we will actually decide later, but is very likely to be Councillor Reach. The Shadow Cabinet Member, who I believe is Councillor Isaacs, and one representative from each political group, who will be Councillors Brooke, Wallace and Siddhartha Ajwal. The members of the Winchester Sport and Leisure Park Advisory Board meeting. The Cabinet Member is Councillor Becker. The ward councillors are Councillors Reach and Prest. And the Shadow Cabinet Member with responsibility for sport is Councillor Kern. The CWR Project Board, the 2 Cabinet Members are the Leader and Deputy Leader, Councillors Todd and Cupp. The Strategic Asset Purchase Scheme Board, we've had a lot of fun going back to the 2016 Cabinet Minute that set this up. And based on that, the 3 members are, the 3 Cabinet Members are Councillors Todd, Cutler and Thompson. However, I would ask that we look at how we can bring those terms of reference and membership up to date. The Treasury Investment Group, we have a similar, the appointments are Councillors Cutler, Lerney and Power. That's based on previous paperwork. The Kings Barton Forum, we have more nominations than places. I think it's important that there's a good geographic representation here. So we have nominations from Councillors Godfrey, Cunningham and Horrell. We also have nominations from the Liberal Democrats of Councillors Cremoyson, Morris, Batho, Porter, Rutter and Eve. I would propose that I think it makes sense that the 3 councillors that represent the ward in which most of the development is built should all be represented, which is Councillors Cremoyson, who is proposed as chair, Councillor Porter and Councillor Rutter. I think there should be 2 councillors from the ward that is part of the development and also adjacent to it, which is St Barnabas. So that would be Councillors Morris and Batho. And then 1 councillor each from 2 wards that are adjacent but don't include part of the development. So 1 from Wonston and Micheldever and 1 from St Bart's. So I don't know if the Conservatives have a view as to who the Wonston and Micheldever nominee should be. So Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Eve would be the remaining 7 members to make up the 7 members. Do you wish to change the proposed deputy? Because Councillor Warwick is already a member as the county councillor nominate, one of the 2 county councillor nominations from Hampshire County Council. Councillor Godfrey as deputy. for the Conservative group. On the West of Waterlooville Forum, I think we have 4 members, including the chair. I think it makes sense that we have 2 from Denmead and 2 from Southwark and Wickham. So the proposals there are for the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Cutler as chair and Councillor Chamberlain, and Councillors Reid and Brooke, and then the deputies, Councillor Langford Smith for the Conservatives and Councillor Vivian Atchwell for the Liberal Democrats. For the North Whiteley Forum, again, the new boundaries mean that it is fully within the ward of Whiteley and Shedfield. So we have 6 places. I would recommend Councillor Vivian Atchwell, Councillor Sadaka Atchwell, and Councillor Small. The ward that is then closest to it, to the development, is actually Southwark and Wickham. So as another member, I would propose Councillor Chamberlain. We then have 7 nominations for 6 places. We have Councillor Pearson from Central Meon Valley, Councillor Wallace from Central Meon Valley, and Councillor Langford Smith from Denmead. And what I would propose, because Central Meon Valley is the next closest place and actually shares a parish with the North Whiteley area, that we appoint Councillor Pearson and Councillor Wallace as the remaining 2 members. The deputies will then be, I assume it would be, do you wish to change Councillor Langford Smith for Councillor Kern? Yes. Councillor Cutler and Councillor Lee. Let's all agree those in one go. Cabinet, you agreed with that list. I hope you've been keeping close track.
Just clarify on the Treasury Investment Group, this list is not the list as stated in the Constitution, because, and you did mention the Council Power would be on there as chair of
Audit
and Governance. It is not actually stated on here.
No, I did, sorry, apologies. On this particular paper, I did go back and look at the original definition, and so the proposal is yourself as Deputy Leader on Finance, Councillor Lerney and Councillor Power, although I don't have the exact definition or list here. Can't quite remember why it was those 3, but I think that's a list that Cabinet is happy with. We'll double check that it's consistent. I think that I'm pretty certain that is consistent with the Constitution. Okay, so Cabinet, are you happy to agree those various forums, boards and groups?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to the member champions. I've heard what said Councillor Horrell. I do think that we should clarify what we want to do with champions, but I'm not sure that this is the meeting to do it. I have 2 nominations for each. For the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion member champion, I have Councillor Isaacs and Councillor Reach, and I would propose Councillor Reach. Agreed. For the Sanctuary champion, I have 2 nominations, which is Councillor Tippett Cooper and Councillor Godfrey, and I would propose Councillor Tippett Cooper. And for the Armed Forces champion, I have Councillor Laming and Councillor Kern, and I would propose Councillor Laming. Thank you. Let me just check that we have covered the rest of the recommendations in the paper. I don't think we have, actually. So we have considered the appointment of the bodies listed in Appendix A and determined the membership. We have implicitly agreed that we will set up a Cabinet Committee for Local Plan and that the terms of reference be delegated to the Monitoring Officer in consultation with the Strategic Director and relevant Cabinet member. and we will make sure that the membership reflects what we have agreed today. And we have appointed the champions as discussed. So I believe we've covered all the items on that agenda. The next item is the appointment to outside bodies. And I'm in the somewhat blessed position of being the only person with a complete list, but I will tell you the choice that we have in front of us as we go through. This one is more straightforward as a paper. It has firstly the list of appointments that we need to make, and then secondly, a useful reminder of the guidance regarding serving on outside bodies. And I will make a comment when we talk to the question of the South Downs National Park as to how we will be improving our work on that in the future. So before we go into the list, I don't know if either Councillor Horrell or Councillor Wallace wish to say anything beyond what they said on the earlier paper. I think your comments probably covered both. Right, let's. Oh, Councillor Horrell, please come forward.
Chair, thank you. I have 3 points I'd like to make this morning as it relates to outside bodies. One you have just touched on in your introduction, and that is the reporting back to all councillors as they represent Winchester City Council on external bodies, that those chosen should actually formally make fellow councillors aware of the work of those bodies and the decisions made. The reality is, Chair, that we have probably not heard very much about these bodies since the last time we appointed people. We don't refer to them on an ongoing basis. And if this is to be a meaningful role, I believe that we should improve that communication between the representative councillors and the council itself. The second point I'd like to make is that I hope when you make excuse me, the decisions this morning, you will look again to those with the appropriate skills for the roles being allocated and local knowledge, not just on political lines. And the third point, which I think you may be coming to comment on, is the representation with the South Downs National Park. Chair, it is a democratic deficit for any councillors who have the South Downs National Park in their area in a large or small way. The relationship with that organisation and the communication with those councillors in the last year has been non-existent and very frustrating for all of them. And I would encourage you to improve that democratic deficit and make real strides to change the way we work with that organisation, given it represents 40% of the district. And I hope that they are fair and reasonable points I'm making to the Cabinet before you make the appointments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell, and thank you for that point. And I do strongly agree with you that it is very important that councillors report back, and certainly we have made that clear point both within our group, and I'll touch on how we are thinking of evolving things for the South Downs National Park a bit later. So we have a long list of organisations that we will run through. I will tell you the nominees and then tell you what I would propose as our nomination to that position. So the first one is the Carroll Centre Board of Trustees. I have 2 nominations, Councillor Wise and Councillor Warwick. I would propose Councillor Wise. Do you agree? For Citizens Advice, Winchester District, I have 2 nominations, Councillor Becker and Councillor Isaacs. Do you agree? I propose Councillor Becker. Do you agree? Where there are uncontested nominations, I suggest we don't stop. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight Association of Local Authorities, with two named places for the leader and deputy leader, so that's myself and Councillor Cutler. The Hampshire County Council annual meeting regarding public transport issues would be the cabinet member with responsibility for transport, which is Councillor Lerney. The Hampshire, so do you agree those two nominations? Thank you. Hampshire Cultural Trust, we have one trustee who is the cabinet member responsible for culture, and currently one observer. Councillor Thompson will be the cabinet trustee. We have two nominations for observer, Councillor Laming and Councillor Cunningham. I propose Councillor Laming. Do you agree? Hampshire Home Choice, the representative is the cabinet member responsible for housing, which is Councillor Westwood. Hampshire Rural Forum, the representative is the cabinet member with responsibility for the economy, which is Councillor Thompson. The Unit 12 Community Interest Company, our observer is the cabinet member responsible for the economy, which is Councillor Thompson. The LGA is automatically the leader and deputy leader, myself and Councillor Cutler. The partnership for South Hampshire Joint Committee, it's the leader, one representative plus deputy leader and deputy leader, so myself and Councillor Cutler. The Parking and Traffic Regulations Outside London Adjudication Joint Committee is the cabinet member responsible for parking, which is Councillor Lerney. The police and so do you agree all of those? Good, thank you. The police and crime panel is one representative plus deputy if required. I have two nominations for representative, Councillor Vivian Atchwell and Councillor Godfrey, and two nominations for deputy, Councillor Jonathan Williams and Councillor Bolton. And I would propose that the representative and deputy are Councillor Vivian Atchwell and Councillor Williams as deputy. Do you agree? Project Integra Management Board is the cabinet member responsible for waste and a deputy, and I would propose Councillor Lerney as the representative and myself as the deputy. Do you agree? The River Hamble Management Board, we have one representative and a deputy, and we have 5 nominations for all those different roles. Councillor Vivian Atchwell from Whiteley and Sheffield Ward. Of course, the Hamble runs along the edge of Whiteley and Sheffield Ward. And Councillor Williams from Bishop's Waltham, and it rises in Bishop's Waltham. Councillor Lee from the Green Party, Councillor Pearson, Central Meon Valley, and Councillor Miller as deputy from Bishop's Waltham. I propose Councillors Vivian Atchwell and Councillor Williams as the deputy. Do you agree? The South Downs National Park Authority. I've been talking to the chair of the South Downs National Park about how we can work more closely together. And they are keen that there should be at least once a year a report back to full council from the South Downs National Park Authority representative, and that is something that I'm very happy to agree to. We have, I'll talk in a minute as to the other options of other things that we're looking to do. We have 2 nominations, Councillor Pett and Councillor Bolton, both from Upper Meon Valley, both a ward which is almost entirely, apart from the Alresford Golf Club and everything south of the road to Bishop's Waltham, in the South Downs National Park. I would propose Councillor Pett. Councillor Pett, I've spoken to Councillor Pett about how we improve representation. He's made it clear that he wants to hold a meeting of all councillors who are significantly affected by the South Downs National Park. A surprising number of wards are actually included within it, in part. Indeed, I think there's only about 4 wards that aren't. St Barnabas, Wanston and Michelover. The Worthies has Abbotsworthy in there, doesn't it? Whiteley and Sheffield isn't in there. St Paul isn't in there. St Luke isn't in there, and that's it. But there are some wards that are very significantly affected. Upper Meon Valley, Bishop's Waltham, parts of Central Meon Valley. Southwark and Wickham. Itchen Valley is heavily affected. Also, Itchen Valley is heavily affected. And then there's a couple of wards where it's sort of affected, but not to the same scale. So I've spoken to Councillor Pett, and he will be holding a meeting of councillors in affected wards to talk about what their concerns are, to make sure that he is able to represent the views of all councillors across the South Downs National Park Authority area. And there will also we will also have a look at how we ensure a more regular programme of reporting back within the council's various meetings. Let's keep moving. South East Employers, Chair of Audit and Governance, Councillor Power. South East Employers, Councillors, Local Democracy and Accountability Network. We have 2 places and 2 nominations. How convenient. Councillor Laming from the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Pearson from the Conservatives. Trust those nominations are all agreed. South East Councils, it's a leader and deputy leader position, so Councillors Todd and Butler. Southampton International Airport Consultative Committee, 2 representatives and 2 deputies. On this particular one, I've had a request from somebody who is not in a council group, who wishes to be a deputy. So I have 5 nominations of the 4 options. So Councillor Lerney is obviously the cabinet member. I have Councillor Pett and Councillor Warwick as the other representative, and I would propose Councillor Pett. And then 2 deputies nominated are Councillors Greenberg and Councillor Cook. So I've proposed the combination is Councillor Lerney, Councillor Pett, and the 2 deputies as Councillor Greenberg and Councillor Cook. Is that agreed? Yeah. The cabinet member is Lerney. The other rep is Pett. The 2 deputies are Greenberg and Cook. That's fine. Tourism South East is a cabinet member responsibility for tourism. Councillor Thompson, who's racking up committees today. Trinity, I have 2 nominations to replace Councillor Clear. We do have other representatives already, including the cabinet member for housing and Councillor Horrell. But I have 2 nominations for the representative, Councillor Tippett Cooper and Councillor Kern. I would propose Centre Living, because the role involves responsibilities as a company director, and because I think it's important that the cabinet member for housing is involved in that decision, and currently they are on leave. I propose that we pause that decision and make sure we have a slightly more formal recruitment process for those places, although we will be very mindful of those 2 nominations. So we will bring that back to a later meeting. In terms of the Wellbourne Community Forum, we have 1 representative and an option for multiple deputies. So the representative is Councillor Chamberlain, and it looks like the deputies are Councillors Cutler and Pearson. Agreed? Here we go. Right. Economy, which is Councillor Thompson. The Beacon, formerly Winchester Churches Night Shelter, is Cabinet Member Responsibility for Housing, Councillor Westwood. What's next? The Winchester Housing Trust. Okay, so that, sorry, those are all position based. Are those all agreed? Thank you. The Winchester Housing Trust, I have 2 nominations. It was Councillor Ferguson. This is to be a director of the Winchester Housing Trust. I have Councillor Westwood, Councillor Horrell. I would propose Councillor Westwood. Is that agreed? The Winchester Road Safety Council, with 2 nominations, Councillor Vivian Atchwell and Councillor Bolton. I would propose Councillor Vivian Atchwell. Is that agreed? The Winchester Sports Stadium Management Committee, I have 3 nominations. Councillor Thompson, who is the Cabinet. Oh, hang on. No, sorry, that's a mistake. That's Councillor Becker as the Cabinet Member responsible for sport. And Councillor Siddhartha Atchwell as a second representative, and Councillor Kern as a potential second representative. I would propose Councillor Becker and Councillor Siddhartha Atchwell. Winchester Welfare Charities, and we have 2 trustees and 2 nominations. So I would propose Councillor Gordon Smith and Councillor Brooke. Oh, hang on. There's only 1 vacancy. Apologies. So we have a choice for the 1 vacancy, which is either Councillor Gordon Smith or Councillor Brooke. I would propose Councillor Gordon Smith. That's it. That's log. So, colleagues, we've agreed them all as we've gone through, just for tidiness, just in case there's anything we've missed and forgot to say agreed to. I'm assuming that with that final list that you are now happy with that set of appointments. Is that agreed? Good. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to the other groups. It's very nice to be able to say that in plural, for putting their names forward, and to all councillors who offered to serve in those roles. The next item on the agenda is the Local Authority Housing Fund property acquisition. If I could ask Mr. Palmer to come forward in case there are any particularly difficult questions I have. So this is a proposal so as outlined in the paper, the government announced a £500 million capital fund. So I will introduce this paper instead of Councillor. Oh, it's got my name on anyway. Good. Well, I will introduce this paper. I was going to say instead of Councillor Westwood, but it's got my name on, so I'm doing it anyway. So the government announced a £500 million capital fund to support local authorities to provide move on and settled accommodation for Ukrainian and Afghan families. We enthusiastically put ourselves forward for that. We were identified as eligible for 2.4 million, and for that we're expected to provide a minimum of 16 homes. And we're required to match fund from the housing revenue account. In addition, in addition, we were given funding to provide a larger home to be allocated to an Afghan household that's currently in bridging accommodation. We've completed a memorandum of understanding. We've received the first tranche of funding. This report is about getting authority to procure the number of homes that we've committed to provide under the memorandum of understanding. What we've been able to do is identify 16 homes that are currently houses of multiple occupation, mostly student housing, on our council estates, plus also 1 in Badger Farm. So mostly in Stanmore, but also Highcliffe, I think Winnell and Badger Farm. And so this proposal in front of us today is enables us to house Afghan and an Afghan family and Ukrainian families who are in housing need. It enables us to do that with extra houses above and beyond what we would have been able to do anyway with the housing revenue account. And importantly, it helps with our priority of rebuilding the community in our council estates by rebalancing the housing offer there and bringing former HMOs back into use as family homes on our estates, which is a long desired objective to support the community there. So that's the paper we have in front of us. In terms of potential deputations, I don't know if TACT wish to speak on this. Right. So your comment is in the paper already. Good. That's that. Okay. Yeah. So as it says, TACT are supportive, and your support for this proposal is greatly appreciated. It's very good to know that it has the support of council tenants. I have a request for 3 deputations here. Councillor Lee, Councillor Horrell and Councillor Tivic Cooper. Councillor Lee, would you like to come forward?
Oh, can you hear me? Sure. Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just to pick up on what current Councillor Wallace highlighted earlier about uncharted waters with warnings of imminent breach of the 1.5 degree centigrade global temperature limits, with repercussions for all of us and our environment and infrastructure. I suggest this makes the need for net zero energy more important than hitherto, particularly for our buildings and infrastructure. And I think that's relevant to the property acquisition proposals, in particular tackling the climate energy emergency and creating a greener district at 1.1 to 1.4. And I suggest there are some options for future-proofing buildings with cost savings as well as benefits for the climate emergency, which merit consideration. I suggest there are 4 approaches, all within the framework of raising the purchase properties to a higher energy performance towards net zero energy. And can I ask if the property acquisition scheme and any further schemes can take tougher approaches to achieve higher carbon and energy performance standards? Namely, firstly, by not seeing Energy Performance Certificate C as the best target, but striving for high energy performance with net zero energy. Second, adopting the London Energy Transformation Initiative, LETI, Climate Emergency Retrofit Guide, and I believe this allows compatibility with the LETI standard for likely adoption by the new local plan for new build. Thirdly, adopting the LETI Specification and Procurement Guide will also assist the Council in specifying and helping contractors to reduce embodied energy and retrofit and upgrade treatments. And finally, considering what is known as Energy Sprung, which is a Dutch approach to whole house or home building retrofit for desirable warm homes for life where costs are financed by energy and maintenance savings. The carbon retrofitted scale guarantees real life performance for both indoor comfort and end use for about 30 to 40 years. The further benefits of adopting this approach is that the off-site manufacturing of treatment would allow cost reductions by minimizing on-site disruption and would potentially help create new desirable jobs in the area in the important green economy transition. It's worth noting that the Energy Sprung standard has already been used in social housing sector, in particular Nottingham City homes. Can I ask the committee cabinet to consider these suggestions and concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, and congratulations on making your first speech at a council meeting. And we will come back to all the deputation points that are made together at the end. I think the next name I had was Councillor Horrell.
Chairman, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak again. This paper is most welcome, and I welcome the government money that has been made available to us to purchase new homes for the specific use of our Ukrainian guests and one Afghan family. And indeed, with our match funding, the end result for the district will be a very positive one. And also the proposal does allow for some rebalancing of the types of homes, particularly in the Stanmore community, as we change HMOs to community homes. And we know that community has been asking that of us for some time. I would suggest, though, that we're moving to a new phase, particularly with the Ukrainian guests, who perhaps were assuming they wouldn't be here for quite this time, and a number of them are coming to the end of their period with their families who initially helped them as they arrived in the country. I would welcome, Chair, a full briefing for councillors on our current positioning with the Ukrainian guests as we work with Hampshire on that. But as the families transition from their original locations to perhaps the private rented sector or to our accommodation or onto other opportunities. And in particular, Chair, I think we need to ensure that we have the appropriate communication in our communities when Ukrainian families are offered Winchester housing stock, particularly when it is in a small community where people have a local connection. They've been waiting some time because the properties are limited, and they see a Ukrainian guest have access to a property in advance of themselves. And I think it's really crucial that as a council, we have a very clear message as to what our strategy is, what are the rights and entitlements, so that we can all be briefed accordingly and speak with one voice. So, Chair, I welcome the opportunity. I'm glad Mr. Palmer and his team have found a good source of homes, and also the detail in the paper in terms of the furnishing and provision in those homes as our Ukrainian guests try to re-establish the next phase of their life in our community. And I hope we can all continue to welcome them as we have over the last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell, and also for your thanks to officers for all their hard work on these issues. Councillor Tibbett-Cooper. Put your microphone on.
There we are. I'm a bit out of practice. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to speak today. Firstly, congratulations to all the Cabinet members on your new appointments. It's an exceptionally good team we have, and as a backbench councillor, I just want to say how good it is in the last year, how accessible and supportive Cabinet members have been to us, and I look forward to working with you this year more. I'm here to offer my full support as the newly appointed Winchester City Council City of Sanctuary champion to this paper that will see 16 homes added to housing stock for a sum of £6 million in terms of grant funding and match funding from the council that will support our Ukrainian and Afghan refugee communities at the same time as increasing our council housing stock. I just want to pick up on a comment from Councillor Horrell about wider representation on City of Sanctuary roles, City of Sanctuary generally, and just let her know and reassure her. One of the things looking to do this year is put together an informal City of Sanctuary forum with key partner organisations, and I would greatly welcome representatives from the the other parties in Winchester City Council on this. It will hopefully have Winchester City of Sanctuary, the University of Winchester, Southampton Winchester Visitors Group, the Winchester Muslim Association, Churches Together, Rotary and the Ark so far, the sort of membership that I'm looking to pull together. Back to this paper very briefly. Firstly and foremost, just want to say this is an excellent achievement, both in obtaining this grant and an excellent investment by Winchester City Council in terms of its share of money for this purchase. On the former point, obtaining this grant is a further example of the success of our housing team, housing officer team. I cannot commend them enough for the work they've done in the last year for Ukrainians under both visa schemes. Actually, the Home to Ukraine scheme gets a lot of attention, but the family resettlement scheme as well. There are people in the district under that scheme, and the housing team, often where there isn't any funding to support them, will in any event try their best to help. And so just consistently and repeatedly thank them, because they are constantly provided with positive feedback from hosts as well about their supportive, proactive and compassionate way they do what they do. So we have around 500 Ukrainians in the district under the Home to Ukraine scheme, and it's a testament to the housing team that there have been no homeless cases amongst our Ukrainian community, and when there are risks of homelessness arising, the action by them is extremely decisive and effective. The Afghan community we have in the district is smaller, and I won't get into the politics of why that is, and indeed why there should be safer legal routes for Afghan and other refugees as there are for Ukrainian refugees. I need more than 5 minutes, I think, for that, Chair. But the Afghan community in our area are also extremely well supported by our housing team. I do accept what Councillor Horrell says, the pressure is on though, and the relationships that exist under the Home to Ukraine scheme are a year, almost a year old for the most part across the district. And although our district hosts are doing unbelievable work supporting those families, some hosts are changing domestic circumstances, and indeed some Ukrainian guests are looking for more independent living opportunities. So what these 16 properties will do is add to our general housing stock and change, as we've said, 16 HMOs currently used primarily for student accommodation into larger homes to support families on our housing register, which is very good news indeed. The new homes will reduce the pressure on homelessness resources and allow 16 council house units to be dedicated to Ukrainian families, not necessarily the ones we buy, but for 16 houses on our list. So it's adding to the list and then enabling us to support Ukrainian families who are at risk. In the long term, these houses remain under council ownership, and of course, more council housing stock can only be a good thing. So just to wrap up, it's an absolutely excellent paper. I commend highly the council officers involved and indeed the cabinet members involved, especially former cabinet member Councillor Ferguson, who worked really hard to push this through. I'm aware. This paper is fully in the spirit of our aspiration to become a city of sanctuary, and indeed is a concrete and substantive action that continues to make this vital principle and commitment a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Tippett Cooper, for your comments, and I fully agree with you that we owe a great debt to the hosts, to the council officers, to the charities, community groups, churches and other organisations that have done so much to welcome refugees to our area. Mr. Palmer, we've had a range of questions raised. I mean, generally a great deal of support, and please do pass on to your colleagues thanks for all the work that they've done. Councillor Lee had some questions about environmental standards. I suppose there's two questions to explore further. One is if you could outline what we are doing in environmental work, and secondly, there's a question about the specific policy areas that he mentioned: the Letty retrofit guide, the Letty procurement guide, and Energy Sprung, whether those are things that we have looked at or will be looking at.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for all the kind comments, and I will pass them on to officers. It has been involved in a lot of inspections of properties over the last couple of months whilst we put this package together. In terms of retrofit, first of all, the comment about EPCs and standards that we try to achieve. EPCs aren't always the best measure of net zero carbon and the energy efficiency of homes. And certainly in terms of new homes, we tend to build above LETI standard. So the current passive house standard that we try to achieve is significantly better. In terms of there's various ways of meeting the net zero and energy efficiency standards. We're very much concentrating on the fabric of the building and fabric first approach. As I understand from my colleagues who lead the programme on retrofitting, the council has an obligation to meet the minimum C standard by 2030, and we have plans on how we are going to achieve that. Corporate director may, or strategic director may be able to add further comments to that. That's outside of my current remit. But we are striving within all of our housing, retrofit and new build, to achieve the highest standards that we possibly can within the relevant cost envelope.
Yeah, and the point about a cost envelope is a very important one. You know, if we get a choice between cutting carbon by 80% in 10 houses or 90% in one, then clearly we need to make sure we're getting a high carbon return on investment. I don't know if somebody's using those terms yet, but it's something I've talked about. We need to make sure that every pound we spend is having the maximum carbon impact. Mr. Hendy, did you want to add any further perspective on the carbon side of things and the retrofit programme?
Not really, Chair. Just to reiterate what Mr. Palmer said, in terms of the existing programme, clearly the social housing regulator requires us to achieve EPC C by 2030, and we're developing a programme to achieve that. But the main issue here is the affordability in terms of the level of investment that the housing revenue accounts can bring to achieve that overall target.
My understanding is we are also making bids to achieve extra funding. Is that?
We've been successful in receiving social housing decarbonisation funding, £500,000 that will be spread over this year and next year. So that will help in terms of achieving that target. And we're always looking for other opportunities to lever in additional funding if we can.
Thank you. Cabinet, do you have any questions on this paper? It is, Councillor Nerney.
Thank you. I know, Mr. Palmer, that you've been involved in looking at full retrofit to those to passive house standards on existing, well, it was, I think, flats in particular, wasn't it? What was the additional costs that were being looked at in terms of doing that? Obviously, that's going to be a top of your head figure rather than something that's particularly accurate.
Yes, there are significant issues in trying to retrofit properties to very high standards, and the costs for the particular retrofit we looked at for a property in our ownership, the top of Winchester, which you may be familiar with. The costs were, I think, about, I'm talking off the top of my head, 40% more than just a standard building reg approval. But that's particular to retrofit and to refurbishing properties. New build, the cost allegedly, it should be somewhere around 10 to 15% more. But retrofit does bring a particular problem because you're dealing with properties which were built often 100 years ago, and making them airtight is a significant challenge.
Thank you. I mean, I think maybe one of the actions that we should take, because this is an area of great interest, is we did have a briefing on the retrofit programme and the work that's being done by the team on retrofit under the last council. And I know it'll be an area of great interest. I suggest we do an update on that briefing, so that new councillors in particular, many of whom I know are very interested in this topic, have a chance to interrogate it. It is one of those ones where I know that some of the people who sort of charged in with an early version of this have ended up with quite a lot of problems, and the mixture of a deliberate and careful and learning approach while still executing with appropriate amount of pace and scale is something that is a big priority for this council. But maybe that would be, I think, a useful thing to fit into the programme fairly early on, given the high level of interest amongst members.
May I assist, Leader? Absolutely. I mean, this morning has been really very helpful. You've indicated a number of areas where members may wish to be briefed, and it's important business of the council. For instance, the retrofit programme, an update on our support for our Ukrainian guests and our City of Sanctuary work. And indeed, Leader, you mentioned around the importance of the South Downs National Park, and although Councillor Pett will clearly speak with relevant members, it's a matter for all members. So we have scheduled dates in the diary where we can do all member briefings that we're holding, and we can certainly prioritise those ones with your agreement. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Chief Executive. Any further questions? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Palmer, and congratulations on these properties. They're really decent size. But what are the skills available, or what is the skill level available in this area to actually do work like this? Because as individual householders, it's often quite difficult to find people with the right skills. And is there anything we can do as a council to help upskill our own workforce within the district? Not our personal workforce, but the workforce of the district.
Thank you. Just by way of training, I'll refer to our New Homes programme and the current development at Winnell. So Waits, the contractors, have undertaken a significant training and engagement programme with local colleges with a view to training up the local workforce. The Winnell development at the moment is to Passive House Light standard, so it is quite advanced, and they have been employing a number of local contractors. They've engaged with local colleges to help train up students coming through the process. We have a full report on that every month with their engagement with local community and training initiatives. So we're gradually seeing those larger contractors investing a lot more in the development of local skills. So whilst at the moment things are difficult, hopefully in the future we'll see more highly trained staff for companies come through the investment that they're making at the moment.
Very encouraging, thank you.
Great. Any further questions? Are there any points of debate that people wish to make on the non-exempt part of the paper? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. I just really wanted to say that I absolutely support this paper. I've always supported the principle of buying back our former family council homes on our estates, and albeit this is quite a small step forward, I think it's incredibly welcome, and I know it will be appreciated by members of the members of the community, our tenants, because we're increasing our stock, but obviously of our refugee guests who are here at the moment. And I would also just like to thank officers who I know have worked at pace to jump through all the hoops that government always require local councils to do to actually secure the money. I know they've worked really, really hard to actually get this over the line, and I'm really delighted to see the paper before us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. Speaking as a former cabinet member for housing, opportunities to expand our affordable housing stock in the district are always very welcome and in the current environment very much needed. The repurchase of council houses is very popular with both tenants and residents on our estates, and I know people will be very pleased that this is happening. It has been very rare that we can make the finances work on these kind of projects because the price of homes is linked to market rents, while we obviously are charging much less, 80% of market rent or lower, which obviously affects how much we can afford to pay. And it's very welcome that we've had government grant to fill that gap, particularly when we do have, the Ukrainian refugee issue, which, as has been said, they have been with host families for a long time, and we need to move to a more permanent solution. Looking at the energy efficiency, I think it's important to say that while reference has been made to the government requirement to hit C by 2030, that metric does not represent our ambitions for our housing. We want to achieve much better standards than that, not only in new homes, but where we're retrofitting existing ones. But in practical terms, if these houses go on the open market, there is no guarantee any retrofit will take place. They could be bought and just left as they are, whereas the council buying them and the level of retrofit proposed will allow for these homes to be rapidly occupied by people in need, and the energy efficiency will be improved in fairly quick order, and we can move to a full retrofit at a later date. So we fully accept that there are issues about how quickly we can move to retrofitting our homes, and we do need to use the funds available to benefit as many of our tenants as possible, not just retrofit a couple of homes and then leave all the rest of them as they are. So I'm very supportive of these proposals, but we do have a lot more work to do on the retrofit programme, and as the leader has mentioned, I think members are going to be really pushing on that in the next year or two.
Thank you, Councillor Lenny. Councillor Porter.
Just very briefly, I'd like to support the paper, of course, but also say thank you to TACT, who have given their support to this. I think it's really appreciated to know that you also support the principle that our guests, our Ukrainian guests and our Afghan refugees will have a home. As you know, it's the most important thing in your whole life. And I really thank you.
Councillor Porter. And before we go any further, we have 3 exempt papers that we might potentially discuss. So there's not. Yeah, so there are 3 papers. Are there any questions? First of all, I trust everybody's read them. Do we need to move to a confidential session to discuss those papers, or ask questions about them? No.
Thank you, Leader. It is, of course, possible to speak about the pink papers in their generality. And I would like to add that I would just like the draft heads of terms subject to a final legal review, please, just to check the conditions on the back. Thank you, members.
Yes, I had a question about condition 4.
Yes, indeed.
You
Leader.
had the same question.
I have the same point. I would.
That I would like clarification on that particular point. I'm glad we both spotted the same thing. So I'm not hearing that there's any need to move into exempt session. Are there any further comments or debate? What I've heard from colleagues is that there is strong support for the work that has been done by Mr. Palmer's team to respond quickly and effectively to the opportunity that was presented to us by central government, and not all local authorities have managed to respond as quickly and effectively. And also the wider objectives that we've been able to achieve above and beyond what we were asked to do by government in terms of cutting carbon and cutting bills, rebalancing of communities on our council estates by buying back HMOs and converting them into family homes, while supporting the overall objectives of supporting the refugee members of our community and increasing the number of council houses that we have. So what I hear is unanimous support for an excellent piece of work by council officers in this particular case that will bring a lot of benefits to our city and to our community and to our planet as well. So all good things. And at this point, I need to ask you if I just quickly summarise the final proposals. Firstly, do you agree capital expenditure of up to £6.065 million in 23-24 to purchase and refurbish the 16 properties listed under Financial Procedural Rule 7.4 using the approved 24-25 HRA unallocated new build budget, funded by a 2.4 million LAHF grant with a balance of 3.665 million funded by prudential borrowing. Do you?
And may I assist with a slight adjustment to recommendation 2, please?
By all means.
Thank you. Please may add, subject to agreement of the heads of terms by the monitoring officer as set out in Exempt Appendix 3, to agree delegation to the corporate head asset management to purchase the 16 properties. Thank you.
A revised recommendation. I only wish I could have drafted myself, Chief Executive, at that speed. Yes, so the revised recommendation that we've just heard, agreeing the capital of expenditure of up to £658,218 to purchase a bridging accommodation property under Financial Procedural Rule 7.4, again using the 24-25 HRA unallocated new build budget, funded by a £329,109 of LAHF grant and the balance of £329,109 of prudential borrowing. And finally, to agree delegation to the corporate head for asset management to purchase the additional property, provide accommodation for those leaving the bridging hotels when a suitable property matching the requirements of the fund is identified. Cabinet, do you agree with those recommendations? Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to, I think, the last item of the agenda, to note the future items for consideration by Cabinet as shown in the forward plan. Cabinet, are you happy to note that? Councillor Lee, did you want to make a deputation on the forward plan? Oh, right, good. High drama.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to raise the subject of the biodiversity net gain technical advice note, a number of concerns to ask for consideration that a number of issues are not overlooked. There are some emerging concerns that biodiversity net gain will just become a numbers game, and that baseline habitat conditions won't necessarily be properly verified, and that mitigation habitat won't be correctly registered, maintained and monitored. And I think that's very important that we ensure that we have clear processes to correctly ensure that biodiversity net gain schemes are implemented appropriately. The other concern is that there's potentially emerging biodiversity trading schemes where that biodiversity credits, obviously sold by land managers, could be open to abuse or creating perverse outcomes. And again, just wishing to seek assurance that the evidence in terms of greenwash or suboptimal carbon offsetting schemes, which no doubt many of you are aware of, is not repeated in the biodiversity schemes that we need to implement as part of the Environment Act. And I just ask for the technical advice note and our planning processes to provide some reassurance and consideration that some of these concerns have been considered And one of the other considerations that the biodiversity net gain planning process might merit an ecological permission system, not dissimilar to our planning processes with respect to listed buildings, building regulations, and so on. This is all very new to most councils, and I appreciate it's the beginning of the journey, but I ask for a full consideration of these concerns, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lee. I can assure you that I know I can speak on behalf of Councillor Porter, although she will shortly speak on behalf of herself, to say that she will be very happy to meet with you and the relevant officers to make sure that those points are addressed. But I don't know if you wish to add anything to that, Councillor Porter.
Yes, partly because I've been to South Wales National Park training, I've seen that it isn't just a numbers game, and I very much appreciate what you're saying. And actually, there's in the planning guidance that came out from government on the 19th of May, there is an item about local nature recovery strategies and the regulations and guidance for that. So it's not just about, and in fact, I've been asking about tree felling and what that means and the cost, not just in cost terms, but in biological terms too. So yes, very happy to meet you, but I'm also very conscious that it isn't just a numbers game, and it's actually something I brought up with my fellow cabinet members just recently.
And I can also assure you that our Reg 18 local plan also takes a particularly strong line on these issues. And of course, as agreed earlier in the meeting, you will have a chance to input on whether that needs further strengthening or change based on the continuously changing policy environment as we move towards Reg 19 in your new role as one of the members of the Cabinet Committee for the local plan. So we look forward to your input on that point as well, but certainly very happy to take you through what's already in our thinking. Certainly our intent is always that we go well beyond the statutory minimum and we achieve the highest standards possible. And as you say, without the slightest hint of greenwashing, and ensure that we are, when we say we're going greener faster, we mean it. But thank you for raising those points, and you will have the chance to, and Councillor Porter will meet with you and with officers to make sure that your insights are reflected in how the paper is prepared. Councillor Learning.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to make the point that with the shift in cabinet responsibilities, the public conveniences strategy is being dealt with by myself.
In asset management, but we can talk about that separately. Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
I'm guessing that we've come to the end of noting the forward plan and the comments that were made, but it would be really remiss of me if we didn't if I didn't mention an award that the council won last week. And it was the Rebus South Award 2023, and we our building was, of course, the new Winchester Sport and Leisure Park. And as the outgoing portfolio holder for the leisure park, I'm really delighted to say that there was an award ceremony last week. Our building was put forward and it was shortlisted, and we did indeed win the Rebus South Client of the Year Award 2023. And I'll just read you a little bit of the blurb that went along with that award. As one enters the Winchester Sport and Leisure Park, the impressive design and thoughtful planning of its facilities are immediately apparent. Despite its considerable size and complex functions, the building is easy to navigate with many clever, accessible design touches. The architects and the local authority client were faced with several challenges, and I would add, yes, the main challenge being building it whilst we were all in lockdown and we had the pandemic to deal with. Anyway, that said, including strict planning constraints due to its location near to the South Downs National Park and the presence of 3 underground rivers and high water tables and flood risks. However, they successfully created a building that meets the needs of the community while enhancing the area. So I would just like to congratulate all the staff who were involved, and Andy Hickman's team in particular, who were involved in the day-to-day workings with the architect and the builders, and thank them all. It is a well-deserved reward, and again, I think it just highlights how proud we can be of our new Winchester Sport and Leisure Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I'm not sure that wasn't a swerve back to item 7 on the agenda, but I'm in a forgiving mood. So, if I may, we'll first note the forward plan. Is everybody happy with that, subject to some drafting corrections? Thank you for highlighting that, and I would add my congratulations to the officers and also all the councillors who were involved in that process for achieving such a well recognised outcome. So I believe we have reached the end. We will not be going to it. We have no further exempt business to discuss. I believe we've reached the end of the agenda. Thank you, colleagues, for all your input. Thank you, officers, for all the work that was done to prepare these papers, and for the adjustments, including the adjusted recommendations that we have had during the meeting. And I declare the meeting closed.